Okay, sorry about that, everybody. My daughter is here with me today because of the situation in the war here, and they don't have school, they have Zoom. And she promised she'd be quiet, but she just lost her first tooth, very first tooth. So she had to interrupt. So maybe that's an auspicious start for this sitting period. Let's see. Okay, so I'll go ahead and begin. Welcome, everybody, to our 4th of 5 days of Sung Alive. Sung Alive Daily Meditations. If you're joining us for the first, if you've been here this week, you know what the general theme is. But if you're joining us for the first time today, this week, I chose to teach on the theme of meditation in a time of crisis, because we are in a crisis. Certainly here in the Middle East, horrific crisis even. And we are, even though there's so much that needs to be said and done and understood and healed, and you can just imagine on the action side, on the doing side of the street, here in this mess meetings, in this container of Sangha Alive, in these daily meditations, we are prioritizing insight. We are the cultivation of insight. We are prioritizing the cultivation of compassion. Because if my insight is this deep, then however I deal with the world is going to have that much insight. If it's this deep, however I relate with the world is going to have that much insight. If it's fully deep, when I relate with the world, especially with human trauma, I'll be able to bring my insight to that much needed realm. So here we're prioritizing insight. Here we are prioritizing compassion. And for this week, in the theme of meditation in a time of crisis, we've had some interesting meetings. Today we're going to look at the Tengu's mirror. And the Tengu's mirror is basically how we orient ourselves from ignorance towards wisdom. And really, our meditation practice, our practice of mindfulness-based meditation, is a gradual, incremental, drop-by-drop process of just that. The Japanese have a saying, Ishi no ue ni mo sannen. Ishi no ue ni mo sannen, on top of a stone for 3 years. And what that basically means is, in the old days, they would have a roof in a house, and the eaves, the water would drop off the eaves, and where it hit the ground, because back in the day they didn't have concrete grounds, it's just a dirt ground. The water drops would create a big hole there, so they had a problem. So they solved the problem by putting a big stone where the water would drop, and then prevent it from creating a hole and accumulating water. But they noticed that drop by drop on that stone, when the drop would hit the stone, it had no effect. But after 3 years of a consistent drop by drop on the same spot on the stone, they would notice that the drops of water over time would create a hole. It's a beautiful metaphor for our mindfulness-based meditation practice, because the practice that we are doing is incremental. It does not seem like a moment of mindfulness it has any effect. It is literally, or comparatively, a drop in the ocean at the beginning. But drop by drop, ishi no ue ni mo sannen, like 3 years on a stone, it will begin to deepen your practice. Insight will begin, the eye of insight will begin to open directly in your practice. The ignorance that dominates our minds, just through identification, will begin to reduce, and the wisdom that is our potential in our mind will begin to increase. The Buddha said that with the practice of meditation, wisdom will increase. Without the practice of meditation, wisdom will decline. And it's in times like these, when there's an external crisis in the world, which triggers all of our internal crises inside, that that we can see, if we're not careful with our mindfulness, that we will decrease in our wisdom. So as I said, the theme today is going to be the Tengu's mirror. And a Tengu is a Japanese, I used to live in Japan. I'm an Aikido teacher, but I'm a meditation teacher, but I'm also an Aikido teacher. And as I lived in Burma and Nepal to practice meditation, I also lived in Japan to practice the martial art of Aikido. I was there for 8 years. And in that study, I also studied Japanese culture and spirituality and Buddhism and Shinto, and not to mention the language. And there's a beautiful mythological character in Japanese folklore called the Tengu. And the Tengu are demons, and they're demons that are killers, they're life givers. Like many of the demons, and like if you think of psychological literature, there's often the monster is really just us. The demons live way, way up in the mountains, in the shadows, far off the beaten path, far away from humanity, but they are there on the edge, just beyond the edge of darkness, is the realm of the Tengu. And a spiritual warrior, a warrior in Japan, a samurai, would do their training for 3 to 5 years, maybe 10 years with their master, and they would master everything in their school, classic martial arts storytelling. And if they wanted to get better, they had to leave the school. So they'd travel around to other schools and sharpen their skills. But then if there was nowhere else to go, the only place left to go is to go and seek out the Tengu, these demons, seek out the Tengu and learn from the Tengu. And the Tengu, these Japanese mountain demons, were half crow and half human. So they had the body of a human, but they had a head of a crow with a long beak. And they had hands of humans, but they had wings and they had legs.
Hey, Miles.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Some people are saying that the volume they're finding a bit low. It's okay for me, but could you try? Sorry to interrupt.
Maybe I just speak louder. Yeah, I'll bring this closer.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Faith. How's that? Is that better, everybody? Can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up in the chat if there's no thumbs up. If there is a thumbs up, I will continue.
Are you able to increase the volume at all or not? Like in your settings?
On this and no. In the settings of the software, no. There's no such thing. I guess I see some thumbs up. Good for me. Yes, perfect. Okay, fine. So we're gonna forge ahead. The Tengu. Half human, half crow, legs of a crow with claws, wings of a crow, arms of a human, head of a crow. And you would go seek out these Tengu. And the samurai would go up into the mountains and they would seek. They would have to go high up into the mountains, far away from civilization, deep into the shadows, and they would seek, and he could never find the Tengu. The Tengu was always just beyond their ability to find them, until the samurai would exhaust themselves, the warrior would exhaust him or herself in that seeking and give up. Then, and only then, the Tengus would descend from the shadows and surround the warrior. And they would take out their swords and they would hold it high above their head, ready to cut the warrior to pieces. And then the king, the Dai Tengu, the king of the Tengus, would come down and land right in front of the warrior. And the Dai Tengu was also half human, half crow, but he had a face of a human and he had a very long kind of phallic nose. And he would descend in front of the samurai. The samurai is exhausted, complete surrender, surrounded by Kurasu Tengu, the crow demons, ready with their swords drawn high above their head, ready to cut him down. And the Dai Tengu would reach into his kimono and pull out a mirror and put it before the face of the samurai, of the warrior. And in that mirror, the samurai would either see their true nature or their egoic self. Self-reflection right there. Boom. If the samurai reacted, cowered, attacked, avoided, ignored the reflection of its egoic self, all of the Kurasu Tengus would cut him or her to pieces. But if this warrior of spirit, if this spiritual warrior, if he or she or them could hold center, stay open, be mindful, and see the reflection of their false self, to be and be with, all of the Kurasu Tengus would take their swords, put them back in the saya, put them back in the sheath. They would all bow down, and they would become the teacher of the samurai. They would become teacher of the warrior. This was a transition from being a warrior of material to a warrior of spirit. What a great metaphor. And you know, metaphors are great because they reflect our true nature. They reflect what's really going on. Reflect in your own meditation practice when we are confronted, when we have that moment of mindfulness and we have that differentiated awareness where we can be and be with what's rising in our mind, no matter how intensely it's arising, with all the suffering, with all of our greed, with all of our ill will, with all of our regrets. Oh my God. At a certain point in our practice, relatively early on, we are flooded with regrets. We start to see cause and effect. We start to understand that every cause has an effect, and every effect arises because of causes. When we start to see that again and again in our practice, just phenomenologically, this thought leads to that thought. Itch on my nose leads me to want to scratch it. Pain in my knee leads me to start to worry about, oh my God, will I walk again? We start to see directly cause and effect. And we understand that when we can just see directly cause and effect, it's like this spiritual warrior who's looking into the mirror of the Tengu with no reactivity, watching cause and effect continue on and on and on and on and on. When we start to see that directly in our meditation, it is not uncommon to be overwhelmed with regrets. And if we collapse into those regrets, God bless us all, because, you know, up to a certain point we will. Then it's like we get cut to pieces by our inner demons. But if we can hold center with some loving kindness, some open heart, some compassion, some forgiveness, and be patient with those regrets, for example, then they will process. We'll see the true nature. That karma will defuel, and we'll move through it. The greatest reactions that perpetuate our suffering in our meditation practice, in our mind, when something arises, like the greed or the hatred or the delusion, or our desires or our aversions or our fears, our laziness of the mind, sleepiness of the mind, procrastinations, our restlessness of the mind, our worries, our doubts. When all of these things arise in the mind, we have three egoic moves. Generally speaking, there's three egoic moves. Either we indulge those mental states. And if you think of our warrior with the Tengu, with the demons surrounding him, when you indulge, suffering is perpetuated. Move number one. Move number two, we resist, kind of fight those inner demons. You know, think of the monks when they had sexual desire, you know, Christian monks back in the day, beat themselves. And that's kind of resisting nature. You can indulge sexual desires or you can resist sexual desires. Those are both in that kind of realm of egoic activity. Or indulge is number one. And just think for a moment, do you have indulgence in your mind? There's no judgment about it. is it there? If you're a human being, if you have an egoic existence, which we all do, there's a good chance it's there more or less. And reflect for yourself. Do you have resistance? Do you struggle, fight, have own internal battles? Probably. If you're normal, probably. That's egoic move number 2. Egoic move number 3 is to avoid or deny or to ignore. Something comes up and no, we don't want to see that. Pain arises in the knee. I'll do anything but look at the pain. Oh my God, why would I want to deal with that? It's like my little daughter here, when she does something naughty and I confront her, Adia, her name is Adia, and she knows it, and I know it, and I know it, she knows it, and she knows that I know it, and I confront her, Adia, and I say, Adia, look at me. She almost can't look at me. She can look me in the eye for a moment, and then look, Adia, look at me. So it's just this natural tendency when things are too confrontational. Oof, thank God that's over. We deny and ignore. We all do this. From childhood, we all do this. Resistance, internal indulgence, internal resistance, and internal avoidance. These are the 3 things that we're going to look at today in today's practice when we're confronted with the Tengu's mirror, as we sit down to meditate, as we set up ourselves with mindfulness and desires and aversions and restlessness and sleepiness and laziness and doubts and worries and fears may or may not begin to arise. Early on in our practice, can even be for quite some time, we're like in a washing machine with those things. God bless us all. It's hard. As the practice matures, and certainly in the advanced stages of the practice, it's much less. And when they do arise in the advanced stages of the practice, your concentration is so stable, you can just be with them. As long as you remember that you're looking into the Tengu's mirror. The stability of mind is what gives us the power to look into the Tengu's mirror. How do we develop the stability of mind? And this is very important. Every time that desire arises, every time that aversion arises, every time that regrets arise, every time that fear arises, every time that laziness of the mind arises, every time that restlessness arises, every time that doubts in others, mistrust in others, or doubts in ourselves arises, we take it as a Tengu's mirror and we just be with it. Even though our mind may not be stable enough to be with it, one moment of being with it is huge. So for our sitting, we'll do our normal practice, but pay attention to these 3 tendencies of resisting physical mental experiences. Number 1 is indulging physical or mental experiences, going towards it, resisting physical or mental experiences, struggling with it, fighting it, or avoiding, ignoring, or denying physical and mental experiences, moving away from it. This is the Tengu's mirror, presenting it to ourselves. Our mirror, our King Tengu, our inner Buddha nature, is reflecting back to us our human nature, our egoic nature. And no judgment for anything that arises, especially if judgment arises. Yeah, it's all part of the process of purification. So let's practice. Finding a comfortable position. Take a moment and check in with your body. And as you notice the physical sensations in the body, the qualities and characteristics of the body, notice if there's any indulgence. If there's a pleasantness, there's probably going to be the tendency to indulge into it. Oh, it's so nice. Notice if there's any resistance or something about the body that you want to resist it, fight it, struggle with it. And also notice if there's any tendency to ignore or deny what is arising physically in the present moment. In our bodies, there's so many things arising, but usually the dominant or predominant experiences is where our mind is drawn to. And bringing your attention to the mind, knowing your mental state, and noticing if the mind is busy with dialogue, with thoughts, with monologue, planning for the future, reflecting, or even ruminating on the past. All normal stuff. But when we differentiate our awareness, when we're able to be and be with what's arising, we'll know the nature of the mind. Just like looking into the Tengu's mirror. Noticing if there's indulging in thoughts. Notice if there is any resisting of thoughts. And notice if there is any avoidance of what's arising in the mind. Should indulgence arise, simply differentiate your awareness for that, be mindful of that, be and be with the indulgence, be and be with the resistance, be and be with the avoidance. That's the move of mindfulness. And bringing your attention to your breath or your primary object of meditation, whatever method you are working with. I'm going to speak about the breath, but you can apply it completely to the body scan or observation of thoughts, whatever. Know with mindfulness what's arising in the subtle movement of the in-breath. Know the qualities and characteristics in the subtle movement of the out-breath. Know that as you observe, as you anchor your mindfulness with your primary object, that subtler and subtler qualities and characteristics will constantly arise. Not to go looking for them, but simply to be mindful, stabilizing the mind with concentration on the experience, knowing the qualities of the experience. Notice any new characteristics that arise with sustained observation of that experience, and knowing what happens over the course of time, what happens to the experience. With each breath, in each moment by moment, breath by breath. Bring your mindfulness back to the body. Feel the body. Bring your mindfulness to the mind and know your mental state. Bring your mindfulness to the breath and feel the breath. Reflecting for a moment on any indulgence that arose in this meditation, reflecting on any resistance in the mind that arose during this sitting period, reflecting on any avoidance that arose. And differentiating your awareness, being in the present moment. Know the space or feel the space on the inside. And as you slowly open your eyes coming out of the meditation, feel the space on the outside. Okay, and as you come back to the present moment, we'll open up this period for Q&A. But before we do that, I just want to remind everybody that this Sangha meeting, this Sangha Live meeting, and this daily meditation space, as well as all the other possibilities to practice on the Sangha Live platform and this community are beautifully held, organized, and created by the good work, and I would even say professional work of all the team at Sangha Live. And I know them from the backstage, so they're doing great work. If you care to donate to this session or to Sangha Live, there's a place to do it on the sanghalive.com website. And I believe Faith will probably put the link in the chat here. So I'm open to any questions that come up. Also, yesterday we did an interview. If somebody wants to do another interview, or even if Pri was with us yesterday. I don't know if she's with us today, but if she, there's a good chance that something might have come up, or that your next meditation practice might have had some interesting changes. If it did, you can raise your hand and join us there. Maybe let us know. We have a question from Clive Martinez. Hi, Clive. Nice to see you again. I remember you from last time. Forgive me. Let me squint and read this. The quote: 100% of suffering in the world has its root cause in the mind. Yes, that was a quote from my teacher, Sayadaw Pandita. He goes on to say, it is a wonderful lens with which to understand suffering. And yes, I agree, it is empowering. There is a way to reduce suffering, and that surely is the path of the Buddha has shown, among others. Yes, I am responsible. I can practice the reducing of suffering. Wonderful, yet 100%. Isn't it an overshoot, not the middle way? Isn't the truth a little more nuanced? Well, sure, of course it is, but there's a root cause to everything. But let me just read the rest of it. No matter how much I train my mind, practice mindfulness, I'm not sure that I fully or 100% in charge of my suffering. That's not what I said. That's not what the quote says. But it certainly is a good practice relationship to relate as if you are 100% in charge, because then everything's practice. But I agree with you at that point. Hang on a second, I lost the place. When the first arrow hits, I suffer. Yes. When the tsunami or earthquake hits the land I stand on, I surely will suffer. If the bomb, where is it? If the bomb explodes nearby, it doesn't kill me instantly, but kills my loved ones, or my enemies, I would add. I suffer, yes. In cases such as these, isn't the point that it is then depends on how I respond to the suffering as to whether the suffering continues or even grows or not? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not quite sure what your question is here, Clive, but yes, I agree with you completely at the end. That's why I was saying, even though the suffering that I receive may not be my cause, externally caused, or it could even be completely impersonal. An asteroid hits the Earth. We can't blame it. It's not the Palestinian asteroid. It's not the Israeli asteroid. We can't place blame on it unless it's an alien. Then we can blame them. It's just a neutral, impersonal event that causes us suffering. True. That's the first arrow. But as we say in meditation, as you've probably heard, pain is inevitable. It's inevitable. We're going to cause it to ourselves. We're going to cause it to others. It's just going to happen sometimes impersonally. Suffering is optional. It's the sense of self that is the root cause of suffering. And the statement that 100% of the suffering has its root cause in the mind doesn't mean it has the root cause in your mind. It has a root cause in the mind. And when we do our work, we're going to work to purify that. If it's other people's minds that are causing us suffering, which God knows that's quite a bit the case in the world today, even ideologies, for example, then in a way we're quite literally victims to that. But how we relate to that is the key. And again, this is a meditation group, so our fundamental relationship to it is to look into the Tengu's mirror, differentiate and observe. Then how are we going to act in the world when we get up from our cushion is a whole other story. But whatever way we act in the world, it's going to be 100% determined by our interiors. Okay, let me go on to the next. Clive, Kevin, I noticed business rather than indulgence or resistance in the mind. I guess you meant busyness. Any thoughts? If it is busyness, that the word you're saying that is busyness rather than indulgence, what kind of business? If you explored a little bit more, there could be busyness, just random, the mind, like a monkey mind jumping around. It could be busy with things you like to think about. Oh, I want to plan that trip to wherever, or I'm kind of creating a new, I'm remodeling my kitchen or something, staying busy in the mind. Thoughts can be desirable, and that's an indulgence. Imagine the most wonderful thought, the cure of cancer arising in the mind. Perfect metaphor. What happens if the cure of cancer arises in your mind during meditation? If your priority is to heal people who have cancer, you're going to get up and you're going to create the cure. If your priority is liberation, you're going to see it as phenomena. It is just a thought, no more, no less than any other thought. It arises, it stays for a while, and it disappears. That is truth. Now, I'm not saying if the cure of cancer arises that you shouldn't act on it. Definitely, you should act on it for the sake of all beings. But when we're prioritizing insight, don't worry, everything's going to come up. And if you can sit with differentiated awareness without indulging it, without avoiding it, and without resisting it, you will be in the process. I hope that's helpful, Clive. Kevin, thank you. Let's see. Could you say something? So Claire Dagenhart, excuse me. Could you say something about the difference between avoidance and resistance? Sure. Well, there's three here. There's three egoic reactions: indulgence, avoidance. So indulgence, resistance, and avoidance. Indulgence and resistance are active qualities that they go after whatever the thought is. So if it's imagine some wonderful fantasy arising in the mind, oh, I'm just going to indulge in that and kind of have a good time in my mind. That would be indulgence. Just like the ice cream that might be over there in the refrigerator, and I'm like, I'm going to go have some ice cream. And before you know it, it's empty. Oh my God. that's indulgence, obviously. Resistance is the same thing. I'm trying to lose weight and that ice cream over there, and I'm gonna fight. And I'm not having a fight with the ice cream over there. I'm having a fight with my own internal desire in this case. Or imagine I hate somebody over there. They did us so wrong. They did us so. They did. It's horrible what they did to us. Now I can indulge this hatred thought endlessly, and we do. I can resist it. I'm a good Buddhist. No, I'm not going to accept that. I'm a Buddhist. Shanti, shanti, and then it just kind of eats me from the inside. Or I could avoid the whole thing. And avoidance is really the ostrich burying its head in the sand. It's classic denial, classic ignorance. So I hope that's helpful. Yeah, and those three things we all do on a regular basis. Miles, could you remind the name of the story the crow beings mentioned? Yeah, I actually have on my blog. It's somewhere. It's already a few years back, but on my blog, theintegraldojo.com, or if you Google the Tengu's mirror, Tengu, Tengu, the Tengu's mirror. I'll just write it down here. I think it's okay. All right. Yeah. Did I spell? Anyways, I misspelled it, but the Tengu's mirror. That's that. If you Google that, you'll find the story of the Tengu. Next, I think I'm skipping people here. Yeah, question. Let me just check the time. 5 more minutes. Focus on my primary object of breath creates a subtle but steady resistance to all other experiences coming up. Is there a way to maintain balance, please? No. The arising of resistance is an imbalance, and it's normal. That's the forward leading path, Henry. So should some type of physical, energetic, mental resistance arise in your practice, remember, don't regulate it away. Whatever's arising in the course of your practice is the path. That's kind of like, imagine a pregnant woman who's about to give birth and going through those contractions. I never experienced it, but I've been next to my wife when she was. It's like saying, oh, is there any way I can get rid of these contractions? Well, not if you want to have the baby, you can't. These are growing pains. These are birth pains. They are part and parcel of the process. So rather than that, we want to learn to create the stability of mind to be with these experiences. It sounds subtle to what you're saying, but even the intense ones. And we want to create the capacity to tolerate unpleasant experiences. With one caveat: if it's overwhelming, relax the practice. When you've rebalanced, go back in. And when you go back in, there's a good chance it's going to take you right back to the same place sooner or later, because that's your leading edge. Hannah, I find myself indulging nearly every thought since I am absorbed with it. This will be the last one. The resistance and avoidance comes afterwards when I realize that I have been absent. Oh, awesome. There's not much for me to say about that. I think that's a beautiful report of what's going on. Good. So know that. So what I can say about this, Hannah, so it's really good what you reported. What I would do when you come back to mindfulness, this is a general rule for everybody whenever we lose mindfulness or whenever we have specific experiences. In this case, when you come back to mindfulness, notice what was the mental state, or reflect, what was the mental state just before this happened? Just before the indulgence happened in this case. Notice the mental state after it, like when you become mindful, and the mental state that you in your common is that resistance and avoidance is arising. Notice if you're able to differentiate your awareness in that moment, and then notice what happens. So in a way, you kind of creating a bookend of the experiences. All this stuff happened, and it's like I wasn't really the most mindful. Now I'm mindful again, and all that happened. I reflect back. Okay, go back to the last moment that you were really mindful. Daddy. Reflect on the experience. Come here. Reflect on the experience, and then what's the current state now? That will bookend, and eventually those moments where we lose our mindfulness, those become the gap closes. So we are out of time. My daughter wanted to show you. She just lost her tooth. It's her first tooth. There it is right there. It's a big morning. She's not in school today because of the situation that we're in. So she's going to be here with me today. If there's any other questions, I will answer them. I'll prioritize them tomorrow. And we'll answer them tomorrow. And I'll tell
your friends outside.
Okay, no problem. I'm not sure what that meant, but good for me. Thank you, everybody. I'll get the rest of the questions. I'll answer them tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to be looking at the topic of the Aikido koan, basically how to work with crisis, stress, and conflict from the perspective of the spiritual warrior. It'll be the last teaching of this series of meditation in a time of crisis. I want to wish everybody a great week of practice, and may your practice lead you forward. May your practice hold you. May your practice give you stability of mind and balance when all kinds of things are going off. And may your meditation be your greatest resource in a time of crisis. Say goodbye to everybody.
Bye, Kulan.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Much love.